$1.5 billion has been raised for the Georgian private sector from IFIS, which will be directed to the financial sector. Georgian Finance Minister Ivane Machavariani told Forbes Week. According to him, in total, the private and public sectors in Georgia have received up to $3 billion in funding from donors. According to the ministers, this amount is a guarantee that none of the important projects and programs planned by the budget in 2020 and 2021 will be delayed or postponed.
3 consolidated tenders with a total value of 25 million lari have been announced in the system of the State Procurement Agency. With this amount, the government plans to purchase 313 new cars with the average cost of 81,000 gel per car. After the purchase, most of the vehicles must be handed over to the Ministry of Internal Affairs.
According to the Union of Oil Product Importers, stability of lari will stop fuel rise. This is noted in the statement issued by the union today. According to the statement, depreciation of lari has had a major impact on the recent rise of fuel prices. In the last few days, the national currency has strengthened significantly against US dollar, which raises optimistic expectations and is an important factor for the socio-economic stability in the country. We hope that the exchange rate of Georgian lari will continue to strengthen. The fuel price in Georgia depends on 2 main factors: international price of oil products according to S&P Global Platts, and the second is Georgian lari exchange rate against US dollars. The statement reads:
Zonal hourly parking will be introduced in Tbilisi's Vakhsh district starting November 20. In total, zonal hourly parking will be introduced on 31 streets in Vakhsh, including Abashidze, Paliashvili, Javjavadze and their intersections. Zonal hourly parking has already been introduced on Bekini Avenue and nearby streets in Tbilisi's central Saburtalo district on September 10.
And this is the Checkpoints, hosted and co-hosted by Elena Kvantjilashvili and myself. I'm Georgi Sakadze. It is 10 p.m. and we start to give you all the information you need about business and economy in Georgia and worldwide.
Yes. And thanks for watching us online, of course. EBRD revised the economic growth outlook for Georgia for both this and next year. Georgia is expected to show minus 5% growth in 2020, while in 2021 economic growth will reach 3.5%. This means that EBRD now projects that Georgia's economy will shrink 0.5% less in 2020 than what it projected at an earlier stage of COVID-19, which is good, but the recovery will be slower than projected earlier. The difference in growth outlook for 2021 is 2%. EBRD says a collapse in tourism is weighing on growth in Georgia.
Further, EBRD states that the COVID-19 crisis weighed on growth in Eastern Europe and Caucasus, where a sharp fall in remittances during the early months of the pandemic was compounded by lower commodity prices affecting Armenia, Azerbaijan and Ukraine, and as you already mentioned, Elena, a collapse in tourism in Georgia's case. GDP in the region as a whole is expected to fall by 4.5% in 2020, recovering somewhat to 2.5% in 2021.
EBRD's chief economist Dmitry Bogol will explain more on the outlook and context. He sat down exclusively with the checkpoints. My main question was, what can Georgia do to avoid basically losing almost 2 years of development, since according to EBRD, Georgia will reach again the 2019 GDP per capita in 2022. Georgia's economy to contract by 5% in 2020 and recover by 3.5% in 2021. Does this mean that the V-shaped recovery that we all anticipated on the early stage of COVID-19 is no longer case for Georgia and for the region?
The pandemic is still quite alive and now even hitting much stronger than before. And this means that economy will still suffer, although we don't expect and we don't take into our forecast that there will be an additional lockdown of a kind as we had in the second quarter. but economy will be hit still by this pandemic, not as much as in the second and third quarter. So we expect economic growth to remain in the negative territory till the first quarter of 21. And this is the main reason why we are going downward with our forecast for 21. 21, now the expectation is that in second quarter of next year, the economies will move to the positive territory, and this caused a substantial reduction downward. Therefore, as I said, this year we are quite close to what we expected in May, but next year, yes, we revised for the all countries of operation downward.
We read that a collapse in tourism weighed on growth in Georgia. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, and is it the only reason?
Well, tourism, as you mentioned, is quite important sector for Georgia. It's one of the backbones of the economy. However, it's not the only sector that suffers in this pandemic, and we can see that in second quarter, when the hit was the strongest, just a few sectors were in positive territory, like agriculture, mining, education, health, but all the rest sectors of the economy were in negative territory. They were declining with double digits, substantial double digits. And this means that the impact on the economy is broad-based. It's quite wide. Many sectors were hit, and the decline in many sectors is ranging from -20, -30, -40, which is extremely strong negative impact. So not just tourism, but it's much more broad-based.
Yes, because what I read from the document is that forecasts are also sensitive to whether governments impose further lockdowns or to how people may react to a continuation of the virus, possibly by self-imposed social distancing. What we hear from the Georgian government at this point, at least, is that further large-scale lockdown is not expected in Georgia. But if we look back, how would you evaluate? Do you think the lockdown at early stage served well Georgia?
Well, if we look from the health perspective, probably it served well because it had significant positive impact in many countries, and the number of new cases of COVID was not so high at that time. We see that now without lockdown, we have some spark of the number of cases. But on the economy, it was vice versa. Actually, the lockdown hit quite severely the economy in almost the whole world where lockdown was imposed. Therefore, it's a very difficult choice for the governments between the health implications and economic implications. As you mentioned, our baseline scenario is that we don't expect additional lockdown till the rest of the year, but as also you rightly indicated, probably there will be some self-restraining of the people and social distancing.
Mm-hmm. Where does Georgia stand in this overall picture of EBRD region, and how does it as compared to some other countries in the region?
It depends how we compare. If we compare Georgia with the neighboring region, which is in our terminology Eastern Europe and Caucasus, Georgia is somewhere in the middle by the decline this year, but also by recovery next year. If we compare Georgia, for example, with other economies in EBRD region, which are open economies with very high proportion of trade in goods and services in their GDP, then we can see that Georgia is hit relatively less than other countries, especially if we compare with other countries dependent so much on tourism.
This time EBRD did a special survey which showed very interesting tendencies, like SME sector being hit the hardest, those with lower education and lower revenue hit the hardest, and so forth and so forth. What did the survey show?
For example, in Western Europe, there is accumulated wealth of the households. Also, companies are in a much stronger financial situation. And for them, it was relatively easier to sustain this impact from the crisis. While in EBRD countries of operations, we have to admit that the standard of living is relatively lower than compared with Western Europe, and also accumulated wealth is much smaller. The savings of the population are much smaller, so there are not such buffers that could help individuals in these difficult crisis situations. And of course, another factor is that Western Europe has much stronger capability to raise debt on the debt market compared with EBRD countries of operations.
Yeah, Georgia raised this debt quite well as well, and thanks to EBRD included in that package. But right now, when we see, for example, lari volatility, and also when we see that the recovery of the economy in coming years might not be as quick, as fast as anticipated before on the early stage of COVID-19. What would be your recommendation? How should Georgian government manage this debt?
The main recommendation would be for Georgia that after the COVID crisis is over, then the prudence of the public finance management that was present before the COVID crisis should return. Of course, GDP growth would play a significant role in this. So it's very important when this public debt management and savings in the budget are government is deciding upon them, that they should have in mind not to save on expenses, on investments that are creating, that are generating GDP growth and contributing to increase of GDP.
Mm-hmm. And just to sum up our conversation, and thank you again for your time for taking these questions. So what can Georgia do to avoid basically losing 2 years of development, since according to EBRD, Georgia will reach again the 2019 GDP per capita in 2022?
Yes, unfortunately, this crisis took a toll on most of the economies, and the basic recommendation would be that economies should increase their resilience to such shocks. EBRD is here to support, and of course, we provide debt financing, we provide equity financing, but we provide also a policy dialogue with the country, and we are ready to support these efforts of Georgia to diversify economy and to make it more resilient to such unexpected shocks.
Thank you for taking our questions.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
And tourism is definitely the hardest hit sector by the pandemic, and we keep mentioning it quite a while now, since the global epidemiological situation does not allow tourism to flourish as it used to in Georgia and beyond.
Such a good point, Georgi. Even in the projections that we just mentioned in EBRD's renewed outlook, the recovery is almost totally dependent on the rebounding of the tourism sector. GDP is expected to contract by 5% in 2020, followed by a recovery of 3.5% in 2021, provided the tourism sector posts a strong recovery next year and other risks remain contained. This is the direct citation from the document.
Yeah. And the document also shows that international tourist arrivals to the EBRD regions, fell by around 65% in the first half of 2020 compared to the same period of the previous year. The collapse in tourism reflects border closures, quarantine requirements, and other widespread travel restrictions. These restrictions were strictest in the second quarter of 2020. Some economies saw a recovery in tourism in the third quarter, however, very partial.
More so, Georgi, as widespread travel restrictions limited international tourism, many economies in the EBRD region sought to promote domestic tourism. The boost from domestic tourism is expected to be modest, as domestic overnight stays have historically accounted for a small share of tourism in the EBRD regions, and the economies in the EBRD regions used to send relatively few tourists abroad, limiting the scope for increasing domestic travel. Furthermore, domestic tourists spend less than foreign tourists. That's also something to keep in mind.
Mariam Krivishvili, head of National Tourism Administration, who has done a tremendous job in supporting the government to manage the pandemic at the level that most international organizations and partners of Georgia find successful, will be speaking in a moment in the checkpoints. Her position is interesting in many directions, since soon she will be running for an MP of the ruling party, Georgian Dream. What defined her choice, and would she say yes today to lead the National Tourism Administration? Answers to this and many other questions in our interview with Mariam Krivishvili. Thank you so much for your time. And considerably, it's like summarizing. It's one of your last interviews as a head of tourism department, supposedly, because I don't know the details of the law, but supposedly you got to retire and go for the election campaign and so like that, yeah?
First of all, thank you, George, for the invitation. Yes, indeed, it seems like this will be supposedly the last interview in the position of head of National Tourism Administration, because within 1 or 2 days, we're already entering officially the election campaign process. And of course, as per the law, I have to delegate position of acting head at GNTA.
Will the new head of the tourism department be elected in the same way as you were? And who's going to be in charge before all these procedures? Because I mean, all the things are still happening around tourism, and someone needs to be in charge.
Definitely, there is a clear procedure how head of Georgia National Tourism Administration should be elected. This goes through official and transparent selection process, where any applicant who thinks or wants to be on the position as per the, let's say, published requirements, if they qualify, they'll be able to submit their CVs on this position. And to answer your second question, before the process is finalized, also as per the regulation, one of the deputy heads will be in charge and will be acting head.
I wonder how enthusiastic and active candidates for the acting head of the future head of tourism department is going to be during this pandemic year. But
oh, it should, because people should really understand that tourism industry is having challenges during this time, and this will be over soon. And all of us need to be together to make this over soon. So this is a temporary process. I mean, if I were on their place, I would have definitely looked at long or medium-term perspective. And I believe that they should be more with courage.
Courage.
Because they need courage. This is the time of courage, because of the existing challenges, because of course no one knows what's going to be tomorrow. There is a very big independent hassle factors which might prevent new head from being able to fulfill the visions or the strategies he or she may be having.
If we'll exclude pandemic, Gavrilo Night, everything what has happened during year and 7 months while being would you definitely run and fill the application form again for the head of touristic department? Are you sure about that?
So if I exclude?
Exclude, sure, because these two things are, that's not challenging, it's something.
And then if I were on the position
If I were,
for this
yes,
position?
for this.
Definitely.
Definitely. Yes. If not, if
Definitely.
you will not, again.
Yes. I mean,
So you strongly advise.
I strongly advise. I mean, I think it all very much depends on the personality. And then if someone likes challenges, if someone likes proving themselves right and really being part of the industry in a sense to be able to contribute, because it is easy to be in private sector at one point, but not today because it is difficult. But it is, what I'm trying to say is that it is easy to criticize.
Sure.
It is easy to say that I don't like the way it's done and I would have done it this way. And now you can be in this position,
And
be
go for it.
criticized, but be able to change what you thought was better to be done rather than how it was done. So
And be responsible.
and be responsible, because taking responsibility for every action, because whoever doesn't work won't make mistake, and this is a working process, but being in charge of the whole process and personally taking responsibility is the key to the success. When
I
it
want to
comes
try and measure together with you. I mean, all the remaining challenges, mistakes, success stories, and I'm more than sure that you will definitely identify success stories and mistakes as well. Go ahead.
Should we start with
Mistakes, maybe?
Mistakes, okay. Well, mistake is a very loud word.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe, of course, I'm sure we've been having mistakes, but I think I would more highlight the regrets.
Regrets?
More
Okay.
regrets rather than mistakes. Well, in regards to what I regret not having enough time. I regret summer 2019 and 2020 in general with COVID-19, which caused lack of time and which caused ability not to be able to fulfill extremely important projects the way it was supposedly planned. So I regret not to be able to be physically part of one of my most important projects, which is so-called toilet project throughout the country. But I'm very proud that I'm leaving the heritage of the project, which has been done with the huge work of my team and Ministry of Infrastructure. However, the team or the new head together along with Ministry of Economy will be able to start implementation process and really make a big difference when it comes to refining that part of infrastructure in our country. Secondly, I think
Again, regrets?
yes.
Go ahead.
Not being able to start implementing the reforms. The reforms of our organization, of Georgia National Tourism Administration, which needs a new structure, which needs broadening up
reform.
and institutionally strengthening in general. Yes, I do mean institutional reforms.
Do you plan or intend at least to report to the society, to the business community, to summarize year and 7 months of your work as the head of tourism department, and will it happen in the nearest day?
I hope that I'll be able to do the summary of my performance. This is my very big wish, because I want to report fully to my private sector as well as to our community, journalists, whoever has interest, or private sector, about all the work that has been done, that is known, and there is much, much more, maybe double or 3 times more, that is not, let's say, officially known to the bigger.
And can you identify the main achievement right now, just very briefly, for the checkpoints?
Main achievements?
Yes, main achievements. You've been talking about regrets Time for achievements.
Well, time for achievements. Diversification of source markets, changed marketing strategy and approach, which means more going into details and based data and analytic-based marketing campaigns. ITB Berlin, Georgia winning the status of host country at the world's most influential travel trade. Tight partnership with private sector and decisions which were based on private sector feedback. And institutional reforms, in a sense, not reforms, but I would say institutional strengthening Georgian National Tourism Administration, which gave us opportunity to do things that were hypothetically not part of our written mandate.
Mariam, good luck. Good luck.
Thank you,
with your
George.
new approaches, and I hope to see you again, because we're still business and economic oriented media.
We too, and me too.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Not to go too far from the tourism sector, let me introduce an investor, Mr. Dominic Romano, who has been doing business and investing in Georgia since 2018. One of his main points in the interview we will be watching in a moment is that Georgia is more appealing and visible for foreigners today than in the past because of the tourism and wise marketing strategy that the country has chosen. Before we go to the interview, let me just mention very briefly right here that Dominic Romano is a serial entrepreneur and investor, advisor for multiple technological startups in Israel and France. He is the founder of the Gibor Holding Company, specializing in brokerage and mergers and acquisitions. Real estate remains until today a significant part of his investment portfolio, together with equity investments in startups. He has already invested in multiple projects in Georgia as well. We filmed this exclusive interview for the Checkpoints in Z10. This is Dominic Romano's investment in the rehabilitation of the cultural site and turning it into a complex of a totally new concept, uniting a restaurant, luxury service apartments, and Saudi investment office. Less from me, more from Dominic Romano himself, exclusively for the Checkpoints. Let's start with the short profile of your company, so that our viewers also know what we are talking about.
To make a long story short, I have a holding in France. That is a family holding owned by myself, largely majority. And I'm investing in private equity. I'm investing in hotels and hospitality and real estate, mainly in France, Israel, Spain, and Georgia.
And why Georgia?
I chose Georgia a few years ago because first I fall in love with your country, fall in love with your people, and I realized that this is one of the very rare countries in the world where you have 4 million people living in the country and 9 million people coming as tourists. So there's the double of the population that is coming from tourism. When you are in the street, you don't feel any danger. And now danger is a feeling that you can get in many countries, including France. When you're going to any places to do some document or to do some papers, people are very efficient. Most of the people that are in politics are young and they can receive you very easily. It's in the middle of East Europa and Asia and Europe, so you are the custom of many countries. And I think the mix of all this civilization make the Georgian a very interesting population and a very interesting place to invest for a French guy like me.
So as the World Bank says, it's easy to do business.
Very easy to do business. You know what? It's more easy to do business in Georgia for a French guy than in France for myself. Here it's very efficient and very fast.
Why did you decide to invest and to look for some other interesting sites for your investment during the pandemic, when we all see that the uncertainty is really high?
So now everybody is disinvesting or waiting because they're afraid about the pandemic, which we can understand, but I want to go against that. First, it's my character historically. Second, the best time to do business is when nobody wants to do business. Third, I'm coming, even if I didn't go to school, I'm coming from a very scientist family. And I believe in science. So I know that for the COVID, in the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, which is not a long story in life, we will have a solution.
Where do you see the potential for growth?
Tourism is one of the biggest growing
features. Yeah.
Yes, in your country. So that's why I invest in hotels and hospitalities. I didn't hear till now so many things about startup and technology in your country, but I know that all over the world I've seen some Georgian guys that are doing some new technology, and I'm sure that there is a good reserve of young people that will do some startup here. So now I didn't do it yet, but I'm very open-minded, and I say that to everybody that is looking at television, to receive some people that have some nice project about startup and technology, and I'm sure that your country will be a very interesting one. Third, in the agricultural business, I know that Georgia is very strong, and I'm looking for new ideas. And fourth, energy. You are missing some energy in your country that you have to do yourself for electricity. You have lots of water in the Caucasus, and you can do hydro, you can do wind energy and solar energy. So I'm willing to invest in those sectors, and I think it's going to be a very good sector in the next 5-7 years.
Yeah, now we are seeing that economic growth trends are quite bad as in the world and globally. Is it an impediment for your decision to continue investing?
Obviously yes, but again, I'm a market adverse. You know, there's a word in French, I'm going to try to translate it, but we say you buy when you hear the comment on dit les canons, when you hear the bombs, and you sell when you hear the violence. So it means that when everybody is happy, it's better to sell, and when everybody is unhappy, it's better to buy. So I'm still market adverse. So I know that it's going to be tough in the next 2 years, but I'm sure that your country will be one of the countries that can grow very fast after the crisis.
Mm-hmm. What makes
because there's a huge potential, because there's lots of young people, because people in your country are workers, they are not talkers, they are people that act, and I realized that on what I already did. When I'm looking for some employees, some partners, or some banks, I always have good answers, fast answers, and mostly efficient answers. Mm-hmm. So I think if I have to invest in a few countries over the 200 countries that are all over the world, I will choose Georgia on top of them.
Yeah, so is that the experience also speaking, because you have been investing here in Georgia since 2018, can you see how the business environment in Georgia is evolving, so to say?
I think even on the past 2 years, there were lots of change. I'm not talking politics. I'm not involved in politics at all, and I don't even know what's going on.
We are talking business as well.
So what I'm saying is, on the past 2 years, there is a kind of evolution. On the past 2 years, when I started to invest in Georgia, I was talking to some friends in America, in Israel, or in France, and I said, Georgia? Where did you get that on a map? You know, and why you choose this country, as you asked me. But on the past 2 years, I think that Georgia made a very good communication and marketing campaign all over the world, because we see in many newspapers some news about your country. Many journalists came to your country and visited as tourists, and they started to speak about hospitalities. You have very nice ski resorts, you have very nice place on the Black Sea, and I think that on the past 2 years, communication make your country more known by people from outside, and then you get some more investors, and then I can feel that I'm not the only one in the street now.
So you are making it sound like it's some kind of a business environment paradise in Georgia, but there might be some challenges as well. Do you see any challenges that this business environment might be facing?
To be very honest, there is many challenges. There is always challenges in business, because there is always surprise that you don't know, including COVID, for example. There is one thing which is very tough for me, and which was tough at the beginning, is the reputation of corruption of the country. Mm-hmm. And when I started to invest, because I'm investing for myself, 80%, 70% of what I'm doing in the country is for myself, and like 1/3 is a fund that I create with my friend George Cohen, which name is Kinor, and we're starting to invest in real estate. And when we market it to raise some money in Europe, when I say Georgia, people look at me like, you know, not very comfortable. Mm-hmm. Comfortable because it's me, they know that I'm crazy, but not so much. So if I'm investing, there's some reason. But I have to give an explanation. Here there is my strategy plus the belief in the country itself. And the belief in the country itself at the beginning was tough, because the reputation of the country was, you know, corruption, mafia, and so on. Everybody knows it was the case 20 years ago, but not so many people knows that it's the case now, which is completely clean. And that's why I tell you, on the past 2 years, there is an evolution, because you communicate a lot, and through tourism, you give the image of a very growing industrial, agricultural, clever country with tourism and so on.
Do you have any specific projects on your mind?
I have two for the future, for the very near future, that are, I think, very interesting. First, I bought the Cinema City plot in Tbilisi, which is a huge place, and it was the first cinema of your country. So I'm very happy to have an historical building that I will respect, obviously, and I will use the story of the building to grow around something that I'm in the middle of the study, so I can't tell you many details because I don't even know. What I know is I will keep the historical building, probably do some restaurant and some fancy things inside, and it will be some convention place and so on, and hotels, co-living, co-working around. So it will be a kind of small town in the middle of your town, which is a very interesting project, and I think there will be a worldwide buzz if I do something very original. I will take some architect from your country to make something very original again. I want something disruptive, so I'm looking for ideas. And the second project, which is again very different, is you have the second airport of your country is Kutaisi, and the airport is growing, the region is growing. I'm not talking about COVID, so I'm talking ex or post. You know, COVID, but COVID will go out whatsoever. And in this airport, there is nothing but the airport. So we bought a huge place around the airport, and we will do a big mall. We will do some logistic place. We'll do hotels for people that will work at the airport or go around. So we'll make a life growing around an airport in the middle of nowhere. And it's very interesting because this airport you can go to ski, you can go to Batumi and to any places, and it will give access to people that doesn't have such a big budget to come to your country, because they come in the middle of the country. It will be a lot cheaper than coming directly to Batumi or to Tbilisi, but it will give access to those people. So around the airport, life must go on, and I will make it happen.
So you are still, despite COVID, you are still having this quite long-term plans in Georgia,
yes,
as I understand.
I think if you come to a country as a new guy, like me, like I didn't know your country 6 years ago, I was never coming here, you have to believe in a mid-long-term investment. And because at least 50% of what I'm doing is real estate, you have to have a vision for a long term. Real estate is not a 5 days investment. And it's again another answer against the COVID, and my belief, first in the country and second in life generally and in business. If I start to do this Kutaisi project, for example, I have to go for tenders for architect. I have to choose the architect. We have to do a tender for the constructor. We have to choose the constructor. We have to start build, and we have to build, and we have to open. Even if I'm the fastest of the world, and even if Georgia's employees, workers are the fastest and the best of the world, this will be done in like 30 months. In 30 months whatsoever, everybody knows the COVID will be gone. Even if it's a vaccine, even if it's a medicine, even if it's gone himself, so we'll be out of that. So I just look at the road, I don't look around.
Yeah, since you mentioned Georgian workers, is it easy to find skilled workers on the Georgian labor market?
Till now, on any question and any problem that I have, I find easily, yes. And honestly, good workers. Good workers.
So
well, I have no problem for that. I mean, I'm talking about mainly real estate, marketing, sales, development. I'm not talking about private equity and a startup, for instance, but I'm sure it will be. But at least for what I'm doing, I have no problem.
You're such an interesting respondent. I would like to ask you to give some advice to those who are starting business in Georgia and beyond.
Believe in your country, believe in yourself. Don't be afraid about what's going on. There's always problem. There's always war. I have 5 children. You know what I'm telling to the Georgian people what I told my children. There's always stairs on your roads. And people, you know, when they see stairs, they don't go up because they can break their legs. Perhaps it's more cold upstairs, perhaps it's more warm upstairs. You don't know. Go to the stairs, make mistake, but go, and then it will work.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Let me use your favorite phrase for this time. So not to go far from the EBRD, let us turn to a statement that was issued by the EBRD, that the EBRD will help the Georgian Oil and Gas Corporation to refinance $250 million worth of Eurobonds. The state-owned corporation issued 5-year Eurobonds in 2016, and their repayment period would have expired in April 2021. The securities were traded on the London Stock Exchange. The EBRD said in a statement that the funding agreement was made in response to the economic shock caused by COVID-19. In addition, the financial package will support the planned reforms within and in the state company. This includes the development of the natural gas exchange market. For more, we can listen to David Oniani, who is an advisor for strategic planning and the funding at the Georgian State Oil and Gas Corporation. Thank you so much for your time. Great to have you with us. Tell us a bit more about your relations with EBRD. When did you start it? On what reasons? We know the purpose already, and we have the deal, but tell us how will it go?
Well, I think Georgian Oil and Gas is really a first name that really pops up when it comes to infrastructure, large-scale quasi-sovereign companies, and of course it's a top priority for banks like EBRD, for any institutional bank really, to deal with the majors of any country. In our case, we would be naturally placed to be approached by EBRD due to the fact that the essential needs that are currently topping the agenda of the country, and also all the infrastructure developments, and in our case, financial developments that would relate to global financial crisis. All this came to a paramount importance, not only to international institutional banks, but to the government as well. So it was their first call of address, really, to...
What the company itself, the corporation itself, well, in general, EBRD is very much aware about the corporation itself, but the company, an entity itself, were they aware about some financials for the very beginning, or it went like a procedure with all kind of entities, or
well, frankly,
simplified?
Frankly, the whole rationale behind this establishing this loan facility with EBRD stems from our actual needs to face off the challenge related to our capital debt, which is outstanding. So we're talking about 250 mils of US dollars currently floating on London Stock Exchange. These are the Eurobonds that company issued back in 2016, and they're due to expire next year, April next year. So, so naturally, that was our immediate challenge to deal with the upcoming maturity of the bonds, and of course, our initial approach was to go back to the markets and roll them over for another 5 to 7 years, based on then sentiments of the markets. So starting from this year, we established a very strong bank syndicate with the top tier investment banks, and we started implementing all the efforts, gearing up probably by the early spring to reach out to markets and do the market exercise. But due to this global financial crisis that was inflicted equally on everyone pretty much because of the pandemics, we were denied this entry to the market. I mean, specifically our window was pretty much bringing the market activity to very minimum. Only big names really issued at that time, big sovereigns, and then peers from the EMEA, from emerging markets. Anyone of our size was basically deprived of market entrance. So we had to think fast, really. So our initial line of thought was to wait and see if the markets would turn favorable to us again, and then try later on this year. But we decided to proactively seek for other measures, for other alternatives, and of course, EBRD was a
So
first stop in
EBRD,
this case. Yes, so I should really say that probably it was record-breaking in terms of timing. I mean, either for us or for the bank of that
2 or
size.
3 months?
2 or 3 months that we really zapped through the due diligence process and all the, you know, all the
details,
procedures
yeah.
and processes that, and also taking into account that this was not the ordinary course of the way. We were in the pandemic, so we couldn't really, you know, have rounds of meetings, negotiations, sit in the room, shake hands. I mean, we were deprived of all these basic features of business as usual. We had to do everything remotely, you know, through the conference calls and all the distance operation of various teams. I mean, there are several parties involved in this as well. But I should say that to our benefit and to the bank's excellent work, we managed to basically put together the whole framework in about 2-3 months. And by mid-September, we had everything ready for the governmental approval.
Could you be so kind to be more specific in regards of conditions as much as you can? We're very much interested. It's going to be for 100% refinanced by this loan, which you reached the agreement within the EBRD, or are there some additional funds needed?
Yeah, well, as I said, there was this whole rationale was basically to roll this Eurobond related liability over. So basically, this facility is specifically tailored to the needs of refinancing. So it matches the exact amount. As for the terms are quite favorable, and I would say even absolutely competitive to not only existing market conditions, but to actually the market, actually the rates that were originally envisaged have we had issued back in the window that we were allocated back in the spring. First of all, we're talking about Euro market. It's Eurozone. It's Eurozone-based credit facilities, so we had to take the advantage of the lower rates in the Eurozone. I mean, Euribor is low, but really negative at the moment. Exactly. So we really had to capture this. And besides, as for the tenor, for example, it's twice as long as the original bond. So in that respect, we were speaking about, yeah, we were talking about 5 years. Now we're talking about 10 years. 10 years of fixed terms, and this is not something that you would have to live for the rest of your life. It's really a flexible facility that is tailored as according to the needs of the company. And in fact, it allows us such an extent of flexibility that should the markets become favorable again in a couple of years, we could easily switch back to the markets. I mean, the terms of the contracts, because usually when you have a long institutional loans, they want you to get locked up with it and live with it. But in this case, we have absolutely no hindrance in going back to the markets. So should they become up and running again, we'll definitely make a switch back to the capital markets. Yeah.
Thank you so much and congrats again. Great job.
Georgi, now let us hear younger voices in business. It's time for Forbes Georgia's 30 under 30. Maria Madamia has interviewed a very interesting person, this time 25-year-old Ambako Bregvadze, owner of the largest nursery in Georgia. The rose is the queen of flowers, Maria Madamia cites.
And not in vain, the young agronomist has more than 300 species of roses in the village of Kvatsiche. It's in Chiatura and grows thousands of roots in a year. This is both his profession and his favorite job. This could be one reason why the owner of such a huge greenhouse says that growing and caring for roses is not a tough job.
The rest will be told by Ambako Bregvadze himself, the founder of the Rose House, and on the Forbes Georgia's list on 30 under 30. Maria Madamia reports.
We realized that working in this field could have been one of the sources of income. Then we looked at the Georgian market and discovered there was no competition in this field, So we decided to produce as many roses as possible and deliver them to the customers. We still face some difficulties due to age. For example, sometimes we realize that we do not have enough knowledge or basis in this field. But over time, working hard helps us overcome these difficulties. Unfortunately, we are not able to export yet, but we fully satisfied the local Georgian market. The pandemic has taught us that every second must be used for work. The pandemic deepened the knowledge that one should be in constant contact with the customer. Online sales have made us realize that there is a big barrier between us and our customers. We can no longer explain and provide information well and clearly. However, Rose House coped well with the problem, and we completely switched to online sales and active involvement in the online world. As for future plans, we want to make a small contribution to solving environmental problems. Previously, only seasonal transplants were used because of the container problem. The container was not easily accessible and there was no production of containers. Now you can transplant a rose at any time because the rose is in the container and the process is simplified. Unfortunately, these containers are made of polyethylene, which is impossible to recycle or process. Consequently, we think we will take some initiative in this regard to reduce the consumption of polyethylene, do more seasonal sales during the summer, and only sell roses in containers if there is an emergency. We think one eco-friendly step would be to remove polyethylene from consumption and clean up the areas where the rose containers are displayed. We think people will also get used to the fact that spring and autumn are the time to work the land and then take care of the planting. I think this will be a big step towards the future plans of Rose House.
Young and old, antonyms, which you already know definitely, but I needed to bridge with the upcoming interview. We all have thought about what we will do when we get old at some point, most probably. Shall we have enough savings to do whatever we want? The pension agency says we will if we save, where if is no more a case since saving is mandatory, at least for those who haven't yet reached 40. According to official statistics, as of today, 484 participants have benefited from the accumulated pension savings, out of which 223 participants reaching retirement age, 1 on the basis of moving abroad, 201 having disability status, and 59 people on the right of hair.
The number of people involved in the pension scheme is growing daily and has amounted to more than 12,000 on average over the last just 3 months. Accrued return on pension savings has reached 100 million gal. Pension assets are allocated at an annual effective rate of 11.1%. This week, the pension agency presented an investment policy document, finally, of its investment council. Goga Melikidze is the chief investment officer of the pension agency in Georgia. So the checkpoints sat down with him for an update. Here is what Goga Melikidze has to say. Thank you very much for your time. The feedback from presentation, document itself, is quite positive. Let's speak about some details and the purpose of the document itself. What is the key messages of this document? You've been working on it last few months, and it's not just working on some key messages. It's a coordination within all the stakeholders and board and all the setups.
Thank you very much for inviting me. So the pension agency has launched this investment policy document, which is IPD, and it is it's very importantly we have to mention that the IPD is done very much in line with the law, that is Georgia law of Georgia on funded pensions. That's in it. That's how it is in English. So the key messages that the law that the IPD delivers are the following.
But also alongside with the regulations and these bylaws and decrees coming from the
National Bank
of Georgia.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
in line with all the regulations and the law. What are those key messages that the document delivers are the following. First, this is the low risky portfolio. So we must be in a low risky portfolio for the next 3 years, while we have to deliver the high real return, effective real return for our pension participants. That's the two key messages that we must be in line with. And this third message that we have to have for sure is that we have to have a high level of the custody of the pension assets. We have to keep the optimal diversification of the portfolio, and we have to have optimal liquidity of our investments.
While being more specific about the allocations, future allocations, up to the presentation, tell me a bit more. What is this 3-year journey within the, how do you say it? In low risky portfolio, correct.
Yeah, we have the following journey, and we call this journey our benchmark portfolio. Benchmark portfolio, it is, just to define what benchmark portfolio is about, this is the low risky long-term strategy that we have from the investment board. And given our benchmark portfolio, it says the following allocation: 60% we must be in a certificate of deposit, CDs. 25% we have to be in treasuries, government T-bills, and 15% in the global equities. Global equities, I mean, we have to be tracking the MSCI index. Yeah. So this will be our journey for the next 3 years. But very importantly, we don't have any specific liability to do a 100% replication of the IPD of the benchmark portfolio. We can deviate from the benchmark portfolio under those risk limits that we have defined and approved by the investment board, so that we might do some tactical allocation within the benchmark portfolio or out of the benchmark portfolio, but all the decision makings that we will be doing will be under the risk limits that we have defined and approved by the
pension agency in the
board.
nearest future will significantly be more active within the capital market of Georgia. I'm quoting the acting head.
Yes.
Pension agency. Could you be more specific in this regard?
Absolutely.
What steps?
Exactly. So from the capital market development perspective, this is also another objective. But this objective must be under the first objective is the low risky portfolio, high real return, and the kind of second tier objective is to develop the capital market. So what we will be doing on the capital market, we are signaling the capital market that we have created a long-term Lari capital for the market. So that all the possible issuers that they can consider that there is a pension fund that they might be buying the shares and the stocks and the bonds for the Georgian company, so that we will be very active in the sense that we will be considering all the bonds and equities that are on the market or that might be on the market, but as said, under our risk limits. So that those risk limits are the following, so that we have the very high level of the credit rating requirement.
It's secured, yeah?
It's a triple B. By the triple B, I mean it must be, or the company must have the country ceiling credit rating, and this is the first requirement. And the second requirement is we can invest in one notch below. We cannot invest at 2 or 3 notch below. And the country ceiling is a double B. 1 notch below is a double B minus. That's what we can do.
Good luck, Goga. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If you want to save, you have to work first. Made in Georgia gives you the understanding what doing business is like for Georgian entrepreneurs. The story of Alex Morchiladze is not the exception.
Salome Jibashvili meets a company called Benjis, producing high-quality chocolate, brandy, and liqueur, using a combination of old Georgian methods and modern technologies. What comes out of it? Let's watch together.
I love quality alcoholic beverages, but due to the lack of quality in the Georgian and international market, we decided to get a hobby and make a unique drink. At first, we had an idea to make it distillate in the form of whiskey, but then we realized that whiskey is not a Georgian drink, so we decided to create a pure Georgian drink with fruit brands, because this type of drink is not very advanced and popular in Georgia. So we went ahead and bought a distiller and stainless steel fermentation tanks. The initial investment started at about $200,000. Once we started making brand drinks, we started looking for fruits as well. We first thought of making the drink with apples, peaches, plums, and of course the classic drink jaja with the fruits that are more widely obtained in Georgia. As a result, we got quite an interesting product. These products are of high quality, therefore a lot of raw materials are spent to get the quality. 40 liters of distillate come out of 1 ton. We process up to 300 tons of fruit. Today we have up to 50,000 bottles in different volumes. Prices start from 7 lari and go up to 15 lari. According to the increase in demand, production capacities can increase to 100 and 150,000 bottles. Production can expand because there are many fruits in Georgia. We're currently trying to enter the market with the existing varieties we have, but we will try to add interesting fruit species every year. We thought a lot about the name. We wanted the name to be universal, so in the end, we got the name of a true patriot of Georgia, a nobleman, Benjamin Hlonti, a doctor, and a true Georgian character. This is how the story of Benji started, which will surely continue and reach many interesting points. Another important part of our product is chocolate, which is very well associated with the drink. This is the drink that should be consumed with chocolate. It took a lot of effort to work on the chocolate product. We brought Italian equipment and gave the chocolate the shape of small bottles to create the image of the company. Today, it is one of the faces of Benji. We have sent samples to China, Ukraine, Canada. We try to enter different markets and offer our unique product. We have also started the construction of a new enterprise, which will be built in 1,500 square meters space and will be completed by the end of the year. Hopefully, the next year's production will double and we will have the opportunity to create new drinks.
Towards the end of the program, I would like to take you to Jvari Monastery in Mtskheta with the US Embassy in Georgia.
So you left the studio again. And good for us. But why Jvari?
The reason is quite simple, Georgi. The Jvari Monastery Preservation Project was selected by Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation. The ongoing preservation works, also funded by the US government, will now extend to cover the entire outer sandstone masonry of the building, including all 4 facades and all 8 sides of the drum, about 1,200 square meters of the wall surface. The first phase of this project was funded with 100,000 USD, also under the same program. The large grant will provide an additional 506,250 US dollars for the vital preservation works, which will be done by the George Chubinashvili National Research Center. Cultural Attaché at the US Embassy, Christopher Anderson, will tell you more. The checkpoints has come to the Jvari Monastery. It is always windy here. This is one of the ancient monasteries from the 6th century, one of the UNESCO sites, and one of the most favorite places for tourists who want to enjoy Georgia's history and spirit, and also this view. So we are now waiting for the US Embassy's cultural attaché, Christopher Anderson, to come to talk to us why the checkpoints decided to have an interview on these beautiful premises. You will find out in just a moment. Hi. This place is unusually still because, you know, the COVID-19. Yes. Big Georgian weddings are restricted.
People come here every year.
Yes, and also no tourists, but still it's a beautiful place.
It is incredibly beautiful. The location itself, among the rivers and above Mtskheta, is just amazing. I was amazed when I first came here.
Yeah, what was your impression?
It was just, first, the drive up is beautiful. I was doing the tour, and I was asking about the different places, and he was telling me about the history of the church. And then he goes, the guide mentioned, oh, and these walls, oh, these are much newer. And I said, how old are they? Oh, medieval period. So older than my whole country, right? They're older than America, but oh yeah. The monastery itself.
It's great.
So the sense of history and culture here is just, it's amazing. It really is.
What kind of project is this? Is it rehabilitation or is it restoration?
Our goal is to protect the way it is now. Protect it from further damage, protect it from erosion, protect it from wind damage, and also damage from tourists, but we're not trying to restore it like new.
So you will be basically working on a facade
Yes.
of this, right?
So we'll be working on the outside of the building, the facades all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see here, there's damage from the wind, from acid rain, from just
Yes.
also the strong winds that come in the storms. And you can sort of see the stones have gotten damaged. And also you see there's some cracks in the stones.
broken.
And those need to have to be filled in, but you want to do it in a way so that it doesn't change the appearance of the beautiful building
Yeah.
and the historical nature of it.
Yeah, so it will still look old.
Yes.
It won't look brand new, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're not doing Botox, we are just preserving.
That's true.
So it will look, all the wrinkles that it has earned over its 1,500 years
Yeah.
will be there, but we'll make sure it doesn't break and make
Yes.
sure it is safe for future generations.
Yes, and this costs $500,000.
This will be $500,000 because we're bringing in international experts, and it's a 3-year process. So you have to do slowly, do the process slowly, and even they will do a little bit, make sure it works.
Are you working with Georgian counterparts as
Absolutely.
well, or are they involved?
Yes, we are working with local partners. The U.S. Embassy is just funding the project and working, which was proposed by the Georgian government, and we're funding it. But there'll be actually a Georgian organization that's implementing it. We are working with Chivinashvili Center to do the actual work, and there's also an American expert based in New York who is here providing consulting advice
Yeah.
to make sure that everything is preserved in the appropriate way.
Yes. Why do you think this is important?
So first of all, the U.S. has been working around the world to try and preserve key important cultural sites. But this site is one of the largest ones we've done in Georgia, and we are choosing this site because it is so important for Georgian cultural heritage, and its religious heritage is an important cultural and religious site, but also it is a key feature for tourists and attracts a lot of attention. So it has both aspects to it. But I think it's also important to note that Georgia has a long history of outsiders coming in and destroying its culture or threatening its heritage. And the U.S. has a different relationship. We're here to help Georgia protect its culture and protect its heritage, even as it moves into a modern, integrated world.
This is all for today. Till Sunday, take care and see you soon.
Take care and see you soon, and follow us on BMG and Forbes. Support us, and we're ready to follow you as well.